Imported foods raise obesity, health issues for Pacific Islanders.
The World Health Organization says obesity rates are rising in Pacific Island countries. So too are health problems linked to being overweight. The WHO says a major reason for the rising obesity rates is an increase in imported foods. It says many Pacific Islanders have replaced their traditional diets of vegetables and fruits with imported processed foods. Dr. Temu Wanganivalu is with the World Health Organization's South Pacific office in Suva, Fiji. He says many of the imported products lack nutritional value, but they are widely available, he says, and often cost less than healthier foods.
In some of the places, be amazed to see how a bottle of Coke is cheaper than a bottle of water. I think that represents the kind of environment we've created that doesn't really encourage or make lifestyle choices an easy choice for the population.
Dr. Wanganivalu says the increase in imported foods is only part of the problem. He says problems with agriculture production limit the availability of healthier foods, and a lack of physical activity among many Pacific Islanders only adds to the obesity problem. The WHO says more than 50% of the population is overweight in at least 10 Pacific Island countries. The rate is as high as 80% among women in the territory of American Samoa. Fiji had the lowest obesity rate at 30%. In all, almost 10 million people live in Pacific Island countries. The WHO estimates that about 40% of them have health disorders related to diet and nutrition. Diabetes rates are among the highest in the world. 47% of the people in American Samoa have diabetes. So do 44% of the people in Tokelau, a territory of New Zealand. By comparison, the diabetes rate is 13% in the United States, a country that has its own problems with rising obesity. Officials also note an increase in nutritional problems like anemia and not enough vitamin A in the diets of Pacific Islanders. Dr. Wanganivalu says treating conditions related to obesity and diet puts pressure on limited health resources and budgets. Earlier this year, leaders of island nations met in Vanuatu for the first ever Pacific Food Summit. Dr. Wanganivalu says the issues are finally getting the attention they deserve.
For lots of people, getting older means getting happier.
Old age may not sound exciting, but recent findings offer good news for older people and for people worried about getting older. Researchers found that people become happier and experience less worry after they reach the age of 50. In fact, they say by the age of 85, people are happier with their life than they were when they were 18 years old. The findings came from a survey of more than 340,000 adults in the United States. The Gallup organization questioned them by telephone in 2008. At that time, the people were between the ages of 18 and 85. The researchers asked questions about emotions like happiness, sadness, and worry. They also asked about mental or emotional stress. Arthur Stone, in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at Stony Brook University in New York, led the study. His team found that levels of stress were highest among adults between the ages of 22 and 25. The findings showed that stress levels dropped sharply after people reached their 50s. Happiness was highest among the youngest adults and those in their early 70s. The people least likely to report feeling negative emotions were those in their 70s and 80s. The study also showed that men and women have similar emotional patterns as they grow older. However, women at all ages reported more sadness, stress, and worry than men. The findings appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers say they do not know why happiness increases as people get older. One theory is that as people grow older, they grow more thankful for what they have and have better control of their emotions. They also spend less time thinking about bad experiences. Professor Stone says the emotional patterns could be linked to changes in how people see the world, or maybe even changes in brain chemistry. The researchers also considered possible influences like having young children, being unemployed, or being single. But they found that influences like these did not affect the levels of happiness and well-being related to age.
Scientists look for answers as more U.S. girls enter puberty at an earlier age.
A mother in Washington noticed something unusual one day just before her daughter's 8th birthday.
I noticed at the end of 2008, I think she's getting breasts. This is ridiculous. She's 7. And I thought I was crazy. So when we went for our annual checkup, I asked the doctor if I was right. And she said, yeah, she has breast buds.
Last year, a study in Denmark reported an increase in early breast development. Now, a new study in the journal Pediatrics adds to evidence of an increase in early puberty in American girls. The study took place in 3 big cities. Dr. Frank Biro at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center in Ohio led the study. He says it began about 7 years ago.
We followed this group of approximately 1,200 girls on a regular basis to see when they would enter into puberty.
Dr. Biro says the study found that white girls had the greatest increase in rates of breast development. The rates, he says, were about twice as high for 7- and 8-year-olds compared to earlier studies. At age 7, the rates were 10% of whites, 23% of blacks, and 15% of Hispanics. Dr. Biro says girls with a higher body mass index are more likely to enter puberty early. Body mass index, or BMI, is a measure of weight in relation to height. But the nation's increase in overweight children may be only part of the explanation. The researchers have been collecting blood and urine samples from the girls for testing. Dr. Biro says the tests are to look for chemicals from the girls' environment that could affect growth.
That is, chemicals that might mimic natural hormones that our body makes, or somehow interfere with how those hormones act on the body.
He says these chemicals could include growth hormones fed to farm animals, but they could also include chemicals such as phthalates. These are used to make some kinds of plastics and other products.
In addition to the types and amount of food that we eat, I think the other important factors are some of these chemicals. For example, personal care products, such as cosmetics, such as suntan lotions, contain certain chemicals that could impact timing of maturation or other body functions.
But it is too early to know what the tests will show.
We'll need to wait for all the girls to enter puberty before we have a good grasp on what the contribution is of those environmental chemicals.
He says less research has been done to look for early puberty in boys. But he says some studies have shown that a higher BMI does not speed up development in boys and may even slow it.
Bringing attention to differences in suicide around the world.
This Friday is World Suicide Prevention Day. This year's observance is meant to bring attention to the differences among suicidal individuals and their situations around the world. But the organizers also say that all over the world, people have something in common. They need to feel connected to others for good mental health. The organizers include the International Association for Suicide Prevention and the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization says that every year about 1 million people kill themselves. It says suicide is one of the top 3 causes of death among people between the ages of 15 and 44. Among people age 10 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death after road accidents. Lanny Berman is president of the International Association for Suicide Prevention. He points out that suicide rates differ from country to country, as do common ways that people kill themselves. As a result, he says, prevention efforts must fit with local needs.
The focus is on the primary methods of suicide in developing countries, which have been pesticide poisoning and overdose. And there have been some significant efforts to develop prevention programs to reduce the use of pesticides, the availability and accessibility of pesticides.
Mr. Berman says findings from agricultural areas of Sri Lanka, India, and China show promise. They show that programs are helping to limit access to these poisons.
In China, women, particularly rural farm women, die by suicide by overdose of pesticide. And by creating lock boxes and making it more difficult to have easy accessibility to pesticides, we've been able to show that we can reduce the use of pesticides and thereby the rate of suicide.
There are often clear warning signs before a suicide attempt. Lanny Berman says individuals usually talk about the idea before they try it.
When somebody communicates that they are thinking about suicide, threatening suicide, writing about it, and in some way communicating that they have suicide on their brain, that communication should be taken seriously.
Another warning sign, he says, is a sudden increase in the use of drugs or alcohol. Warning signs also include expressions of hopelessness or a sense of feeling trapped. Mr. Berman says the risk of suicide can be more difficult to identify in children. They generally communicate more with other children than with adults. But the other children often do not understand the messages. As a result, he says, when children speak of suicide, other children rarely report it.
Osteoporosis increases danger of broken bones.
Today, we tell about osteoporosis. a disease that can make bones weak so they break easily.
A new study shows that binge drinking by teenagers may increase the possibility of osteoporosis in later life. Researchers in the United States say drinking a lot of alcohol over a short period may influence genes involved in bone formation. Bone biologist John Calacey led a team studying the effects of alcohol on young rats. He teaches and leads a research laboratory at Loyola University's medical school in the state of Illinois. His team's findings appear in Alcohol and Alcoholism, a publication of Oxford University Press.
Binge drinkers swallow large amounts of alcohol over a short period. One definition says, binge drinking happens when a woman has at least 4 alcoholic drinks in a hurry. For men, binge drinking can mean 5 drinks in a short time. America's Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration says binge drinking can begin when a person is about 13 years old. It says binge drinking generally worsens in young adulthood and slowly decreases after that. Professor Calacey's team studied adolescent laboratory rats to learn the effects of binge drinking on their genes. The team injected alcohol into the animals. The injections resulted in a blood alcohol level of 0.28. In many American states, a person is legally drunk when the level of alcohol in the blood reaches 0.08.
Some rats received a daily injection of alcohol for 3 days. The researchers say the alcohol affected about 300 bone-related genes in those rats. The other rats received alcohol over a similar 3-day period, but the injections continued for 4 consecutive weeks. In these rats, 180 genes were affected. The injections added ribonucleic acid, also known as RNA, to the genes of some rats. In the other rats, the RNA in the genes decreased. Ribonucleic acid tells the gene how to make proteins, the substances necessary for bones and other tissues. These changes interfered with the pathway of molecules responsible for building bones and keeping them strong. Professor Calacey says one of the most worrying findings came 30 days after the injection stopped. At that time, the animals still showed differences in the way their genes were expressed. 30 days of a rat's life are about the same as 3 human years. Professor Calacey says it is not necessarily true that what happens to rats' genes will happen to human genes. But he says the findings suggest that young people's binge drinking could signal problems in their future.
Bones are living tissue. Tissues continually break down and then replace themselves. However, as people get older, more bone breaks down than gets replaced. The result is that small spaces inside the bone get larger. the shell of the bones also gets thinner. The word osteoporosis means porous bones, or bones that are not solid enough. The disease harms bones by removing calcium and other minerals from tissue. The National Osteoporosis Foundation says 8 of every 10 osteoporosis patients are women. It says the disease is most common in Caucasian women over age 50. 2 years ago, the National Osteoporosis Foundation suggested that doctors extend their list of persons to watch for osteoporosis. The additions included Latina, African American, Asian, and other women. The group also called attention to the fact that men can also suffer from osteoporosis.
Before people develop osteoporosis, they have a condition called osteopenia. Treatment can prevent this condition from becoming osteoporosis. Doctors can identify osteoporosis and osteopenia by measuring the mineral density of a person's bones. In this case, density means the strength of the bones. Bone mineral density can be measured in a number of ways. Doctors use the tests to examine the hip and spine, or backbone. The National Osteoporosis Foundation says a test called Dual Energy X-ray Absorptiometry, or DEXA, is the best test for osteoporosis. DEXA uses radiation from X-rays. The patient does not get much radiation from the process, which lasts only a few minutes.
Another way to measure bone density is called peripheral bone mineral density testing. It is often used in the United States to show people if they are in danger of osteoporosis. A movable machine does the test. Medical testing companies sometimes perform the exam at an office or other place of business. The exam costs less than the DEXA. Peripheral testing measures only one part of the body. Usually that place is the wrist, the heel, or the bones between finger joints.
If the testing device is in good condition, it probably will give satisfactory results. But what if the patient has normal bones in the tested areas, but not in others? A person could appear normal on the test, but she still might have osteoporosis in her backbone or hips. Bone mineral density in the spine decreases first. A woman's bone mineral density becomes about the same in all parts of her body after she is 70 years old. The lower-cost test may not give complete answers, but it can warn that osteoporosis threatens or has started.
The National Osteoporosis Foundation has advised several steps toward the goal of healthy bones. Its experts say, get enough calcium and vitamin D. They say, do not smoke or drink too much alcohol. Talk to your doctor about bone health and a possible bone mineral density test. The National Osteoporosis Foundation says people over 50 should get 1,200 milligrams of calcium every day. It also says this age group should get 800 to 1,000 international units of vitamin D. it says vitamin D2 and vitamin D3 are both good for bones.
Milk and milk products contain calcium. So do fish with soft bones, like salmon, and dark green leafy vegetables. Some orange juice, bread, and cereals may have calcium added. Some people take pills containing calcium. However, be careful about how much calcium you take. You should not have more than 2,500 milligrams a day. That total includes calcium from food and all other sources. Too much calcium can cause problems like kidney stones. Vitamin D absorbs or takes up calcium. Fish, cereal, and milk are rich in vitamin D. If you spend at least 15 minutes a day in the sun without a product to block the sun's radiation, you probably get enough vitamin D.
Several kinds of drugs treat osteoporosis. America's Mayo Clinic medical centers say bisphosphonates are the most popular. Fosamax, Actonel, and Boniva are products of this family of drugs. Doctors who treat osteoporosis patients say physical exercise can help the bones. For active people, lifting weights or playing tennis, slow running, and dancing can be helpful. Some people who have not exercised worry about the effect of exercise on their joints, especially the knees. They are afraid exercise might cause osteoarthritis. In that condition, connective tissue around the bones wears down. One study in the Netherlands shows that might be possible. The results linked knee osteoarthritis to high mechanical strain, activities that are hard on joints.
Another study found that regular physical exercise does not harm joints. Scientists from Germany and the United States considered earlier research on the effect of exercise on joints. They did not find a link between normal exercise and knee osteoarthritis. If you are still worried about exercise for osteoporosis, try taking a walk. The Mayo Clinic says walking helps your bones. However, you have to do it correctly. The Mayo Clinic says hold your head high, straighten your back and neck as much as possible. Tighten the chest muscles. As you move along, let your shoulders and arms move freely and naturally. Walking raises the levels of chemicals in the brain known as endorphins. They reduce pain and make you feel happier.
What people with asthma can do to keep it under control.
We recently told you about health problems linked to extreme heat. This week, we talk about the lung disease asthma. For people with asthma, extreme heat can be especially troublesome, as can extreme cold.
Asthma is a serious disorder that makes breathing difficult. The World Health Organization says asthma affects about 300 million people worldwide. An estimated 250,000 people die from the disease every year, and more than 500,000 others are treated in hospitals. Asthma happens when tissue that lines the airways to the lungs begins to expand or swell. This swelling makes the airways smaller. the muscles in the airways tighten. Cells in the airways begin to produce a lot of mucus. This thick, sticky substance causes the airways to close even more. This makes it difficult for air to flow in and out of the lungs.
This series of events is called an asthma attack. As asthma sufferers struggle to get air into their lungs, they may begin to cough a lot. They may also make a whistling or breathy sound called wheezing. Some asthma sufferers have tightness or pain in the chest. They say it feels as if someone is sitting on them. When asthma is most severe, the person may have extreme difficulty breathing. The disease can severely limit a person's activity and even lead to death.
Doctors do not know what causes asthma. Researchers believe a combination of environmental and genetic conditions may be responsible. 40% of children who have parents with asthma will develop the disease. 70% of people with asthma also have allergies. Allergies are unusual reactions of the body's immune system to otherwise harmless substances or conditions. Doctors have identified many of the things that may trigger or start an asthma attack. Triggers are things that cause the asthma sufferer's airways to swell. Different asthma patients usually have different triggers. Allergens are one of the most common triggers. These impurities in the air cause allergic reactions. Some of the more common allergens include animal hair, dust, mold, and pollen.
Pollen is a fine dust that comes from grass, trees, and flowers. Mold is a kind of fungus. It can grow on the walls or floors of homes. It is often in wet or damp areas like bathrooms, kitchens, and basements. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 21% of asthma cases in the United States have links to mold and dampness in homes. Air pollution can also trigger asthma. Cigarette smoke is a major problem for asthma sufferers. So is air pollution from motor vehicles. Chemical sprays like air fresheners, hairspray, cleaning products, and even strong beauty aids can trigger an asthma attack. Some people cough, wheeze, or feel out of breath during or after exercise. They are said to suffer from exercise-induced asthma. During the winter, breathing in cold air can trigger an asthma attack. So can colds and other respiratory infections.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says more than 23 million people in the United States have asthma. Among adults, more women have the disease than men. Asthma affects more than 7 million children each year. It is more common among boys than girls. The National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases says the disease affects African Americans more than whites. African American children die from asthma at 5 times the rate of white children.
Special English reporter June Sims has a 14-year-old son with asthma. Eric first showed signs of the disease when he was about 2 years old. The doctor gave Eric a medicine called albuterol. Albuterol helps to increase airflow and reduce tension in the airways. The doctor also gave Eric a machine called a nebulizer. It connects to a mask that he placed over his mouth and nose. The nebulizer turns the liquid albuterol into a fog-like mist. Eric inhaled the mist through the mask. The treatments made it easier for him to breathe. During times when Eric's asthma was really severe, he was also given steroids to help reduce swelling in his airways.
As Eric grew older, the doctor replaced his nebulizer with a small medical device called an inhaler. He also began seeing a doctor who specializes in treating patients with asthma. The doctor discovered that Eric also suffers from allergies. He now takes medicines every day to help keep his asthma and allergies under control.
Asthma has become a major health issue around the world and a problem for many individuals, families, and economies. The yearly economic cost of asthma is close to $20 billion. The World Health Organization says asthma rates are increasing worldwide by an average of 50% every 10 years. The largest increase has been among children.
The Global Initiative for Asthma, GINA, was formed in 1993 to raise attention about asthma. It also seeks to improve asthma care around the world. GINA is a joint effort of the World Health Organization and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute of America's National Institutes of Health. In 2004, GINA released a report called The Global Burden of Asthma. The report said asthma is a growing problem in both industrial and developing countries. The report suggests that asthma rates in developing countries increase as they become more westernized. It estimates that there may be an additional 100 million people with asthma by the year 2025.
While asthma cannot be cured, it can be successfully controlled. This year, GINA's World Asthma Day campaign was called You Can Control Your Asthma. The organization launched the campaign in 2007. Its aim is to show that a large majority of asthma patients can control the disease with correct treatment. GINA says several simple steps can help people control their asthma. People should take their asthma medicines as directed by their doctor. Most people need two kinds of medicines. One is a quick-acting rescue medicine, taken when needed to stop the signs of asthma. The other is a controller medicine taken every day to prevent these symptoms. People should know the causes of their asthma symptoms and try to avoid these triggers. For example, seek to avoid animal hair, dust, pollen from trees and flowers, or cigarette smoke. Some people may need to take medicines before they work hard or exercise.
Patients should work with their doctors to control the disease. They should go to the doctor for medical examinations, even if they are feeling fine. They should make sure they understand how and when to take their medicines. They also should act quickly to treat asthma attacks and know when to seek medical help. This year, Gina launched a campaign to urge governments and health officials to do more to improve asthma control. The campaign seeks to reduce asthma hospitalization by 50% in 5 years.
Earlier this year, researchers identified what they hope will be a new tool in the fight against asthma. They said a new non-steroidal treatment made from a human protein has proven successful in greatly decreasing the signs of asthma in mice. The researchers said the protein, called IGFBP3, prevented the development of some physiological conditions linked to asthma. This includes inflammation and overactivity of the lungs. The researchers say the protein attacks an important cellular pathway called nuclear factor kappa B. NFKB is responsible for the lung inflammation linked to asthma. The discovery could have a major effect on asthma as well as other respiratory problems related to inflammation, like rheumatoid arthritis and atherosclerosis. The results of the study were made public earlier this year at the Endocrine Society's 92nd annual meeting in San Diego, California.